guys, it's your girl Virgo Queen here, and you are watching the MMA Conspiracy Hour with Todd Atkins and Miguel Iturrate. Todd has been involved in covering the sport of mixed martial arts since the 1990s, and Miguel has been the matchmaker for over 200 events worldwide. Please subscribe to the channel and be on the lookout for future episodes. In the meantime, you can catch me here on TikTok at Virgo Queen, one and only. Thanks.
All right, this is Todd Atkins, and I'm finally back with Miguel Iturrate. I know we've been kind of not as frequent, but we've both been pretty busy lately with different things. Yeah, but we're back with a vengeance, so you're gonna see us again. And today, Miguel, this is something that Miguel had really asked to discuss. I'm interested to hear his take on it, which is this whole Conor McGregor, President, Prime Minister of Ireland, whatever you want to call it. And he even kind of gave a little bit more into it in this press conference he just did recently, where he kind of admitted that he's retired, which is what we always knew, and that his gut is more going in this direction of, doing something for his country, so to speak. So, Miguel, take it away.
Yeah, I think it was a very, you know, I can't say it was a total surprise because we've talked about his ego being unchecked many times in the past, and I think that what you're seeing here is that really yeah, he's an A-type individual. This is an A level, uh, you know, uh, ego boost here, where nobody's telling him this is not a good idea. Look, you already have nine figures. Most people never get to nine figures of money ever. Um, be happy, live the rest of your life, be fine, fight, don't fight. Stop being a spectacle would be good for your country. That would be good if you stop being arrested and stop being sued and stop winding up in court and stop being up people in Italian hotels and Florida hotels and stop doing interviews high, stop being a drunk at the BKFC shows where you know guys are trying to do a face off and you're sticking your big head in the middle. You know what I mean? Um, those are all things that you could do to, do something good for your country. It would be just stop being a moron. But there's no one there telling him to do anything, and he thinks that I could be president. It's like okay, well we'll see. I mean you know it was predicted in the movie Idiocracy, I think it's called. It's a movie about the future and how the president was a pro wrestler. Well, here we go. So basically, um, a real fighter, but definitely with the pro wrestling delivery of everything he's going to do and the physical nature of what is going to happen there. But he has a lot of money, and we'll see how money talks. The other thing that makes me kind of keep dwelling on it a little bit longer than I really should is that just as an observer, Ireland seems, when you're on I look at things as a pendulum. You got too far right, too far left, too far right, too far left, and you always kind of wind up somewhere, facing in the middle is where the majority of the people are. But Ireland seems to have swung a little bit to the left, and we'll see how bad the reaction from the right is. In the States, it was good enough or bad enough to win the presidency, and both houses in the the representatives and the Senate majorities. Um, it showed itself there. So should that happen, I don't think McGregor is obviously not going to be the candidate, but there may be a right wing candidate that comes out of Ireland. And if somehow it's McGregor, then I can't suggest anything better than to just bust out the popcorn and just watch. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, we don't we don't get much coverage of Ireland politics, but it might be worth looking into if he managed to get any run.
Yeah, I think they have some. First of all, Ireland has very nice tax laws, so a lot of companies, IT companies particularly, have gone to work there. Obviously, they have a pretty educated public. You know, a lot of kids took computer classes in the last 20 years, I guess. And so it's considered a nice place for tech. Um, it's very far to the left on social issues, um, like on immigration, which has gotten to the point where it's a burden on many people, and that is one of the factors that helps swing the U.S. back towards the right was immigration, right? So they suffer from immigration. I think McGregor mentioned that. So he's at least clever enough to bring that to the forefront if he's even remotely serious, right? Um, and they've got other problems like they a pretty strong anti-Israel stance in the United Nations, like where they're calling for the Palestinian state and they're calling Israel, saying Israel wants to do a genocide, and you know, uh, a lot of other countries may feel the same way, have kept their mouth shut. And I'm not saying that Ireland shouldn't express itself, but Ireland, Norway, and there's maybe Spain, I think, is the third country of the European group that have come out very hard against Israel and for the Palestinians, and it's caused problems. And again, that could be something that swings the country back towards the right. So you never know. That's my basic take on it.
Like I don't think the people are necessarily behind him. It's hard to tell from like Twitter response, but I've talked to people there, and it seems that most people aren't too fond of him in general. But
Yeah, I think he really he's not coming from a great spot of the last few, even basically the last 10 years since Mayweather. You could still now looking back at it, Mayweather was the biggest thing he ever did in his career. And that wasn't what he said when he fought Mayweather. He said that he was going to just only do big things and this and the other stuff. And he's been increasingly smaller and smaller, increasingly running the same script for his, build up to fights and things like that. He hasn't changed or evolved much. He's gotten distracted by his money and by a different lifestyle. Um, so yeah, I don't think with that track record, immediate track record, he's in a good position. Like he needs to really have undergone like a little bit of an image change somewhere. The last time I saw him, it was on a BKFC, like I said, sticking his big head in the middle of the weigh-in, with two guys that were kind of heated with each other, and you just kind of wonder, is it all, are they scripting all those little things now at this point? And it's not out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, kind of, playing along, drinking it up, acting, and the part, whatever you want to say it, but still making a spectacle of himself, not looking, quite frankly, not looking sober, and so all those things would normally in the past have eliminated you from a political career, but maybe it's the 21st century. We're just getting old, Todd, right?
yeah, I mean, I see him at just from what I've been looking at, it looks like you got the typical like political forces that are probably gonna probably make it difficult for him to run even if he wanted to. And I don't
I,
necessarily think the people are behind him. The overwhelming majority of people in Ireland like him to begin with. So
I
to me, it
agree.
feels almost like like how he acts on Twitter, where he wants to draw attention to himself and not do what it is he said he was
Sure,
going to do.
sure, sure. And at the end of the day, here's what it comes down to. If he's really getting close to worth $500 million, and obviously a lot of that is I think, did he cash out of the liquor company? Did he sell out on that? Or is he still a part of
I
that?
think he's probably still involved. I don't know exactly.
But
Maybe he
the
did, but
point
I know they removed him as any of their advertising type of
the point
face
is,
of any
if he's
kind.
worth $500 million, right? If he's worth $500 million in some form, a lot of that is assets and not cash on hand, right? So let's give him credit that in bank accounts here and there, he's got 20% of the money they say he has. So he's got $100 million stashed away somewhere, which means we spent everything else or played around with everything else, or but he's got 100 million and and or obviously the liquor store stock. At this point, he's probably got a nice house in real estate and things like that. He's got a few $1 million tied up, so he's got assets, and then how much cash on hand? So say he's got 100 million cash on hand or 50 million cash on hand. How much of that is he willing to blow on a run? He's going to be doing a serious run, which means he will have to listen to advice also, which he may not like. But um, yeah, I think that's where it'll go wrong for him. Is at some point, if he decides to try to take it seriously, somebody trying to get him to do something he doesn't want to do, will there will be a spectacle cause, and that'll be the end of it probably. If I had to make a prediction, I would go with that one. That Connor will fuck up, because at some point he would have to snap to, and he hasn't shown that ability as he's gotten older to snap to and show up and do the work. So you can show up for a debate on coke. I mean, how off the wall is he? In which case he won't last long. But so he would have to take it extremely seriously and then be ready to blow a lot of money. If he blew 50 million, I venture to say, like they say, Trump's run was a couple of 100 million, and if Kamala had gotten to $1 billion in fundraising or whatever the numbers are, you assume Ireland's political parties and political race would be a percentage of that. They would be smaller, the amount of money they spend and things like that on a run. But how much is that? Would they be in serious trouble saying, "Oh my God, he's got $50 million of his own money he's willing to spend"? And is Connor that crazy? An unchecked ego, he might do. His accountant tell him not to do it, but he may say, "I want to do it," and that's it. So who knows? And literally, times are so strange. Looking at it, that I guess I'm leery to call it a complete. We may have to take it seriously at some point. At some point, people are like, Trump's not going to run. He'll never be president. This or the other thing. And you looked up and you were like, uh oh. And I don't think Connor's got Trump's ability to push forward like that. I think he'll stumble, but yeah, he may be in the political process, and we may have to watch it other than just listening to him on press conferences. That'll be the interesting part. If he actually steps over and declares he is going to run, open an office, start getting political contacts, you know, uh, go kiss the ring of Kinahan, and so, and that's it.
Yeah, that's probably what he would do. It's kind of hard to believe that we're seriously discussing this, but
Yeah,
it is worth
it,
discussing because it would be just for the entertainment factor alone.
yeah, I think it would be a good indicator of, Connor's got a lot of money now. He's going to get off the planet with a lot of money. Because if you start doing stupid stuff, and this might be he could buy up land all over the world. He could buy, he doesn't have to spend, with $10 million, he could have investments for the rest of his life, his family's life, and things like that. He's got a lot more. But how much is he going to have at the end, right? How much is he actually going to leave his kids? And you always speculate, oh, these are guys, you always hear athletes that wind up with no money. Does he have so much money they can't possibly wind up with no money? Well, if he jumps into this political thing, that's probably the most expensive use of money if you're going to use your own money.
Yeah. Yeah, it would, it's like I said, it's hard for me to believe that we're kind of talking about this, but I guess it's kind of a void of MMA news to that degree that we're even discussing it. But
Yep.
I don't know what the process is either for him to kind of break into where he could, be in, if they have debates, if he would be in them, that kind of stuff. If there's any.
Well, if I would have to guess, he'd have to have either whatever lawyer, corporate paperwork to register either a new political party or register as a political politician in an existing political party. Probably a smaller one, not one of the major ones, but maybe he would lift a smaller party for more recognition and they might back him, right? So once he's affiliated with a party, I think they got to run around and get signatures. I mean, this is more the American system, I think. I can't say that the Irish system is identical, but they would have to have some type of validation process for them to decide, okay, these are the two candidates, these are the three candidates. And there would have to be some threshold he has to meet. And it might be signatures of people that are willing to let him run or would vote for him, you know, in a like a polling sort of system beforehand to see if he qualifies. And those qualifications in some states are rigid and some states are not. So I don't know, what Ireland has to compare, but assume that he meets the minimum threshold to be on the ballot, so to speak, then yeah, then all bets are off because I doubt that the other two candidates would have $50 billion of their own money to spend on it if they so chose. And he does. Um, so we'll see. We'll see how much the political process in Ireland is based on money, just like many accuse many of the you know democratic and capitalistic countries of being right.
I saw a funny headline. Which is less likely, him becoming president of Ireland or him fighting again?
Yeah, I think actually, I think it's equal. It's absolutely equal. As zero for both, right? But we'll see. But he's more likely, like I said, you're definitely more likely to see him trying to advance his process of being a politician more than fighting. And I think you're right. I think you mentioned something that he's come back, he's done press conference, and he said his heart's in something else right now. Um, he went to the Trump inauguration, you know, so you could say he drank some Kool-Aid or whatever you want there, but he felt real power, what real power was. And so yeah, I think you're definitely more likely to see him step into the political stage and into an octagon anytime soon. Yeah.
In a way, it doesn't surprise me. I know I said I'm surprised that we're discussing this, but a lot of these fighters, at least a handful, you've seen them kind of try and turn toward being political. Jake Shields is one of these guys who's been doing this a lot on Twitter, like nonstop. Like
Hmm.
this is his next grift. And then you got guys like Colby Covington, obviously. Masvidal kind of dabbled in it with Trump a little bit. Guys
Brad
who are
Kohler.
trying to,
We interviewed Brad Kohler.
well, Brad Kohler's legit. He actually ran. But I'm saying these are
Right,
the
right.
guys where they're trying to get noticed. I would say
Yeah,
it's
I did.
not
I did.
run, but get noticed.
Right. I think becoming an influencer is a way to put away some money. These guys have to recognize, the work Chael's done on basically, an all MMA. I guess he dabbles in other things, but basically an all MMA background for his podcast, and he's very successful. And they would probably love to be taking home, monthly checks for whatever that is. So yeah, I think a lot of people fantasize about it. Like you're right, Brad Kohler actually went through the process and presented himself and ran, wore suits and did rallies. And that's again, that's what if you start to see that McGregor is starting to do that, buckle up.
Yeah, it would be entertaining. Some other things that have happened since we last talked. Cain Velasquez, I think he was sentenced like 2 years, which isn't
I think I saw
well,
five.
five,
I don't know
five, but
if that means
they said
he'll
if
do two.
if he, sustains good behavior, he'd probably be out in like 2 or maybe even less. But just maybe give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean the country's very divided. Sometimes I think people are looking at this probably through the lens of politics. And you know, knowing Kane and knowing that he was a respectful, quiet individual, an amazing competitor, um, kind of a fighter through and through. Um, he was also always he was never a guy that I think he was keenly aware that he had a gift with his physicality and his abilities and stuff. And I think he was grateful for it. And I think that you never know what's going to happen if somebody hurts your child, right? And I think that that's the kind of thing that people consider differently. You should be able to control yourself. You understand if he couldn't control himself. Um, I guess 2 years might be a low amount of time for somebody normal to, to do that. So his position has been presented, I guess, well enough that he's not doing 10 years or anything, whatever the max was for something like that. But I think it's a shame because, at the end, his daughter, went through a trauma that will
I think it
probably,
was his son, not his daughter, or a
okay, so his son,
relative. I'm not even sure
whatever
exactly.
the victim was, and the victim, focusing on the victim, only,
Yeah.
well, I thought I saw it was a little girl, but
Uh,
it doesn't matter. It
yeah, I
doesn't matter.
wasn't
The
sure.
point is that that child has gone through a trauma already that will probably be there at somewhere at some psychological level for the rest of their life, right? So add to that, oh well, you know what's also good for this child? Let's take his father away or her father away for a few years in the middle of their development as well, because that's sure to help, knowing that the guy really has no criminal record or criminal leans towards the criminal side or anything like that. Um, you know, the guy'd be more worth it. He could probably make $50,000 a year going to sign autographs a few times a year on, on these card shows and appearances and things like that. You know what I mean? Um, but they're going to take him away. They're going to put him in jail for something that I just don't see the risk of him just, oh, he's going to go off the wall and kill somebody at Walmart because he's now yeah, so yeah, I think it's a shame that he's going to do time for this crime. I think it's um a little bit of a travesty because I know him and I really, again, it is just my opinion, but I really don't think that he's criminal minded, that he's a risk to society in any other way. Unless you hurt his kid, if you hurt his kid again, now there's, you know, hopefully that never happens again. You know what I mean? For anybody. But many parents have reacted that way. And there's been a wide range of results from it, from leniency to not leniency. And this is decades and decades of this problem. Um, but to me, Kane shouldn't be doing time. He should be left with his family. He could check in, he could go through whatever processes you want, but let him earn some money and let him be a presence for his child that he protected. And that would be actually less trauma on the child.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any other headlines we could kind of discuss. I'm trying to
Well,
remember if there are any
what
major
happened with the
ones.
PFL? Is the PFL letting these guys go? Or are they not letting it go? Have they even responded to there was like internet news like 10 days ago about some PFL fighters that were asking to be let go, that they don't want to fight there.
They let go of Ryan Bader,
Okay. I
which
doubt
I don't
Bader
think
winds
is
up back in the.
necessarily a big deal. I mean, yeah, he's a good fighter, but
Yeah, he's an undersized heavyweight that in the UFC wouldn't really fare that well. And maybe he could get back down to 205, but I don't like that weight cut at his age. He's been around for a while now. So I don't think Bader is going to be UFC material, but there were other guys. Was it Aaron Pico, or am I way off on that?
that was the one they were holding, because they were
So,
in the negotiating period, which could last like a year. I don't know when it'll end, but they had their, how you have your, even ESPN with the UFC has this. So I know fans are complaining, but UFC had to wait to negotiate with other people because they're in a exclusive
yeah,
negotiating window with ESPN. So I mean, it's not unheard of, but he's already made a voice that he doesn't want to fight for the PFL. So they're just basically holding him until he leaves, which I don't know if that's productive, but
yeah, no, it's not productive, and it's also not a good PR move. And
yeah.
and since they don't really have a huge fan base, or I'm assuming, maybe in Europe they're starting to gain some traction, hopefully, right? But in the US they really don't mean much. But so what that affects them is with future fighters that will sign with them. Did you hear what they did to Aaron Pico? They kept him, they held him for a year, didn't offer him a fight. He didn't want to fight. He asked them to let him go. They wouldn't let him go.
Yeah.
not a good PR move with people that you're going to try to get to sign the same contract. And I assume they're going to play big company like the UFC and be like, no, 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 no changes to the contract. You sign it as is, or we move on. If that's the case, they're setting up the UFC as hard as they are in the upfront negotiation, and they've let very few people change that contract as on the way in, right? Um, but they also really haven't had huge enforcement issues over the year. I mean, they've had them here and there, but they haven't been very prevalent or too many of them, right? So it works as a you know, to prevent people from messing around, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I assume that the PFL basically copied the UFC's contract. You know, they probably looked at it, changed a few things, and kept most of the things there. That's usually the way, startup companies like that, make their first contract when they get to that position, right? They've been around enough with the uh, what was the name of the Ray Cephal company, Professional Fighters League,
World Series of Fighting.
World Series of Fighting. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, with the World Series of so even back then, I mean, obviously they had their contracts and stuff, but yeah, that right of first refusal stuff, it's just a bad PR move because hey, if Aaron Pico sits while he wants to fight, you're taking a year away from a kid with a 15-year career max if he's lucky. And he looks to have some potential. Maybe that number goes up a little bit. Maybe he's an all-time great, and then it compounds the problem of you're taking a year away from a kid in his prime or in his rise that is good development time just over a political move, and you're only going to survive a few of those before fighters stop signing on.
And, Leon Edwards loses to Sean Brady, in London. Um, I'm not surprised by it. I think, and one thing I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Lincoln Tyler, who fought in Super Brawl a number of times, and this was in the early days. He was saying, the UFC's depth of talent really isn't that great. And I think people kind of get maybe sidetracked thinking, oh, this guy's really good or this guy's really good, but maybe they're not, so to speak. And Leon Edwards, I think, kind of falls in that category as someone who's, yeah, I mean, he beat Usman. The first time he had to do it at the last second. But, at the end of the day, he hasn't really had like a ton of amazing wins, to where
Yeah,
I don't think people should be shocked that Sean Brady beat him. Sean Brady's a very high level grappler guy, a guy who compete at the highest levels. And yeah, he did what you would have expected to do if he could get the fight to the ground.
yeah, yeah. I think we've seen this a couple of times now. You get to the top, whatever happens at the top happens, but it's inevitable that there comes a time or a point where um uh you can't pull the trigger, you can't win anymore, and you start to rack up losses. And now joining this club uh of Adesanya and Usman and guys like that is Edwards, who can't get back on the winning track, right? Um and yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I think towards the end of his reign, we saw that he went from a humble, you know, basically a good humble fighter, who waited for his chance and waited a long time for his chance and this sort of thing, to a little bit of a cocky guy towards the end where he kind of deserved to lose his belt. Um, Oliver McCall in boxing fell apart pretty hard with drug use and things like that. And obviously, I'm not saying that, but he's another guy that after beating Lennox Lewis and kind of being on top of the game for a long time there, not for a long time, for a short time, when, he never made it back. And some guys make it back, some guys don't. And Leon Edwards is officially really not going to make it back to the title picture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how a lot of these guys that were kind of championship material over the last few years are they're all kind of falling off at the same time, which is to be expected based on their ages.
Yeah, two years. Two fights a year, 6 months between fights. Even at the highest level, I don't think any of those fighters, especially because they're making better money, right? But I don't think any of them would say no to 3 fights a year. I know it would change a few things, but it would make more than anything change a little bit of downtime and dedicate them more. And I think that, with doctors' checks and being healthy and stuff like that, I think that after their career, they would look back at it and think it was a positive move. They would add, 3 to 5 fights more during their prime years, which would be their best monetizing years, and maybe many of them retire with a little bit more money. Um, which means the UFC may have kind of relaxed at um, the schedule because they are basically doing a show every week, right? I mean, they'll take a week here and there off, but they basically run a show every week. Um, but that's been the case now for a few years, and at some point, the next level is you got to look at, in the case of, let's say, baseball, you've got the Major League Baseball schedule, which would be the UFC. Then you've got Triple A ball, Double A ball, and A ball, and other leagues all going on all at the same time. And on Friday, you couldn't watch every game on Friday because every team plays and this, that, and the other stuff. You've got to get to the point where people can't watch every major MMA league in the world and catch on to the sport. So it's got to be happening where you got to read about it in a newspaper where a guy catches your interest and eventually you decide to look into him. And for that, the UFC needs to be running several shows a week. Um, and they don't seem to be ramping up to that. Are the bodies there for that? Yeah, the athletes and the bodies are there to really do, you know, show in Asia, a show in Europe, a show in the United States, and a show in Brazil all on the same night.
Yeah, and as we wrap this up, I'm going to propose the PFL tournaments are coming up next month. We should watch it, the first series of tournaments, and we'll do shows on it, and let's see what we think because we're tournament guys. We're around when that was going on, and let's see what
Yeah,
it is. Let's see what it's about.
yeah. I'll tell you this. Color, and I think it's obvious from the tone of our podcast. Color us unimpressed by Don Davis and the PFL's management style here. But as a person who's been involved in a lot of these shows, um, I've been involved in shows that went smooth. I've been involved in shows that went awry, and you had to scramble around at the last minute for replacement fighters or alternate ideas, or all kinds of last minute stress trying to put the show together. And there were many of those shows that were very stressful before that you don't know how you pull off the show, but at the end of the day, the fighters saved the day. The guys put on great fights, great show, people left happy, and by the end of the day, it was all turned around. And I sincerely hope that the PFL fighters save the day here by putting on nice performances, memorable performances for themselves, for the fans, and see if this thing really catches on. Um, so yeah, I'm willing to watch in April. I'm willing to watch hopeful. I'd like to see an injection of fighters I haven't seen before. So I think that would be a
Hmm.
good reason to tune in April, just to get your feet wet in something very different here at the start, and we'll see at what level it is. We'll
Yeah,
see
I was a
how
big
how it,
fan of
how it
Bjorn
looks.
Rebney's tournament Bellator, so I'm interested. See the same guy, the one who wins. You're going to see him, I think, 3 times over 5 months, or so. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think it'll be.
I just talked about 3 fights in a year. Now this is 3 fights in half a year, and at that point, you know, the tournaments, the PFL would be wise to understand that something is probably 3 things are going to go wrong. You know what I mean? One tournament isn't going to, you're going to have the alternates become difficult, and another tournament you're going to have a real injury that you can't handle. or that the alternate is a big drop off in name recognition. You're gonna in the third one, you're gonna have another guy that thinks he's the next coming of Dan Severn or something and wants, to negotiate for millions or whatever. So there's going to be things that go wrong before you finish all your tournaments. They're not going to go smooth.
Yeah,
If
that's
you,
something we can take into it if it happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you have the attitude that you're there now to fix the problems, then good luck, and hopefully we get great fights, and you still carry the day in a way that the fighters can enter the ring in prime to give their best performance. That's kind of what I hope for the PFL.
Yeah. I think it's a great thing to sign off on. As Miguel, it's always awesome to catch up with you. I talk to you all the time, but I always value your insight every time. And
Thank you, sir.
everybody, I hope you guys appreciate Miguel's experience, and knowledge. And we want you to subscribe to the channel and support what we're doing. And as always, we appreciate it. Until next episode, take care.
Thank you.
Up, everybody? It's your boy Drew with High Fight IQ, and you are now watching the MMA Conspiracy Hour with my boys Todd Atkins and Miguel Iturrate. Miguel has been the matchmaker for over 200 shows worldwide and has worked with Hook and Shoot, Euphoria, Bodog, and ADCC. Make sure you subscribe to the Todd Atkins Show on YouTube. You can also find Miguel on his YouTube channel at MMA Collector 74. Don't forget to subscribe to High Fight IQ on all social media platforms, the House Call Sports on YouTube, the Fight Pit on YouTube. Now let's talk some fights, baby. Let's go.
Audio Jungle.